Welcome back, everybody. My name is Tucker, and in today's video, we're going to talk about the return of the NBA in the Orlando bubble with the scrimmages that went down yesterday. There's actually a lot to take away from how the games went down, how everything was set up, and what this is going to look like now as we've seen a couple of games go down in Orlando. But before we get started, if you're enjoying the content, then subscribing is a great way to keep up with the channel, and leaving a like rating is also a great way to let me know that you're enjoying the content. We try to get to around 1,000 likes on every single video just as a baseline, so if we could get there, that would be awesome. With that said, let's go and get started. Okay, so first I have a couple of general points here about these scrimmages yesterday, and then we'll get into some more technical stuff. So first of all, man, did it feel nice to have live sports back on TV. I know that everybody's situation is different right now, and everybody's in different levels of quarantine or not quarantined or whatever. And I know that internationally there have been some live sporting events, but I'm not into soccer or anything like that. And for basketball specifically, it was such a relief to have live sports on. I didn't expect it to impact me this much while watching it, but I had to keep reminding myself that I wasn't watching a replay and that I was watching real NBA basketball again. And it was an incredibly positive experience for one, but it was also a surreal and a strange one for just watching sports that are live to have such an impact on me, but it was awesome to see. And it kind of seems like they're doing everything right now as it relates to the bubble itself and the quarantine and the production of the games themselves as well. So I just want to give a huge shout out to the NBA. Not that I expected anything less, but Adam Silver and everybody else that was involved in getting this set up. As of right now, first impressions are that it's going very, very well, whether it's the bubble or, as I said, the presentation of it. Everything looked great yesterday, and I'm so happy that it's going as well as it is, and I hope it continues to go that well as well. Now, in terms of the on-the-court stuff, it was predictably pretty rusty depending on which game you were watching. Some of the ball movement was good at times. There were certainly some good sequences, but as you would expect, it's going to take a little bit of time for these guys to get used to playing, real NBA basketball games again, and these aren't even real NBA games. They're shortened quarters, guys that normally would never be on the floor playing in the game, and it feels a little bit more like summer league than it does actual games. Maybe that'll change once we get to real regular season games that actually count in the standings, but hold judgment for now. Everybody kind of knew that these guys were going to be rusty, and as a result, I'm really glad that they had these scrimmages first, not only to test the production, the presentation of everything, which I'll talk about in a second, but also to make sure that these weren't the first games back. Like I said, there were some good sequences, but it certainly wasn't what we're used to in terms of mid-season NBA basketball, and so I'm glad that they're giving these players some time to adjust and working up to that start date that's on either the 30th or the 31st, depending on which team you're talking about. So at the end of the day, the shot making and stuff like that is going to be a little bit rusty, but everything in terms of what I saw was a really, really positive thing from these scrimmages yesterday. Okay, now let's talk about something that I was really, really interested in when they announced they were going to try and do the bubble, and more details came out. And as we got closer and closer to it actually happening, and that is kind of the audio and how everything sounds. And my first impression was that it did seem, at least in a few of the games, like they were pumping in crowd noise into the arena. And I don't know if it was specific to one game or another. I don't know what the different courts are like and things like that. But it definitely seemed like, obviously they had the in-arena sounds that you would hear during any game. But it seemed like there was just like a little bit of a murmur in the arena, the stadium, whatever you want to call it, on the court, right? And I don't know if that's just because there's people there and the acoustics are different than a typical NBA arena, or if because that was pumped in noise. I don't know how many people were actually there to be able to create actual noise, but it wasn't really bad. Like, it sounded pretty good. It sounded pretty natural. And I think it was probably better than the alternative of it being really, really quiet. Again, assuming that they were pumping in that noise. If they aren't, sounds really nice. The on-the-court stuff in terms of hearing the players, because of that other noise, you couldn't really hear what they were saying, which for some people is a disappointment. They really wanted to hear what guys were saying on the court, but whether it's because they don't have all the regular audio set up on court to pick up the players, or because of that crowd noise being pumped in, or just because of the way the audio is set up, couldn't really hear those guys. And all those things are good. My only issue is that it felt very, very much like Summer League, as I mentioned in the previous section, which isn't a bad thing right now. It's just scrimmages. You're just trying to get guys, warmed up to get ready to play in real games. But the vibe is going to be very strange if, for example, you're in the last couple of minutes of a Game 7 of the conference finals or an NBA finals game. The vibe doesn't quite match it. Now, obviously, the players will be much more intense. The benches will be much more intense. And so maybe that'll make a difference. But in terms of the noise outside of the game, it did feel a little bit strange if we're talking about like a game that actually matters in a significant way. So that's kind of a wait and see thing for now. But for what it was, for just scrimmages, it felt very much like Summer League. The audio and just everything in general to this point looked very, very good from those scrimmages yesterday. And the commentating was good as well. I don't know if they're doing, because they have like the league pass commentators, like the Nets had Ian Eagle calling the game yesterday, and I don't know if that means that Ian Eagle is in the bubble or if he is commentating remotely, which if he is, they put it together in an awesome way because everything sounded great. I don't know, there's all this technical stuff, but my overall feeling is that they did a really good job. And then the last thing that I want to talk about is a little bit more on the court stuff, and it has to do with people's takes, basketball takes about the scrimmages. Let's just go ahead and throw this out there. Don't be the guy that starts saying that Bol Bol is going to be the next star that the Nuggets need based off of a couple of scrimmages. Don't be the guy that says that one team is now going to win the title because they played really well in an Orlando bubble scrimmage. Don't be the guy that makes a sweeping declaration about a team trending positively or negatively based off of Orlando scrimmages. I know that we're all very excited about the NBA coming back, and trust me, I am too. But just don't be that guy that is going to make this out to be something bigger than it is. The scrimmages specifically, once we get to the regular season, the postseason, you know, fire off as many takes as you want to, but it doesn't really make a ton of sense to judge based off these scrimmages. And the best thing that I can tell you is just to treat it like Summer League and just say, oh, Bol Bol had a nice game. Also, it was a really weird lineup. Also, the other team didn't really play their best players as much as they normally would. So this probably isn't that big of a deal. Just treat it like Summer League. Let's not make this into some kind of bigger deal than it really needs to be. Also, context is going to be something that's going to be incredibly important for people to take into account here, because you never really know what each of these teams are playing for. Like, yes, you've got teams in the West fighting for the 8th spot. You've got teams in the East fighting for the 8th spot. But seeding-wise, up at the top of the playoff picture, it's kind of like, you know, what are these teams really playing for other than matchups if home court advantage really isn't a thing? So I wouldn't take too much into account when you're talking about, oh, you know, this team beat the Lakers, this team beat the Clippers, this team beat the Bucks. Those teams really don't have all that much to play for at the moment. It's really about those teams near the bottom. Speaking of teams near the bottom, my very own Brooklyn Nets, it's looking really rough right now. I knew it was going to be bad. I knew it wasn't going to be great when you're losing so many players, whether it be to injury or just not showing up to Orlando. But their inability to score the basketball is going to be really, really tough to watch at times. They've got a roster made up of half replacement players, and between them and the Wizards, whoever gets the 1 seed in the East, most likely the Milwaukee Bucks, should just auto-advance to the second round. They shouldn't even play the series, because whether it's the Nets or the Wizards in the 8th seed, it's going to be ugly regardless. Those teams might struggle to score 80 points, 90 points in a game when they don't have, you know, their best players winning the Nets. You've got all kinds of replacement players. And then for the Wizards, Bradley Beal isn't there either, and the team wasn't that good in the first place. So it's going to be really, really rough for those teams at the bottom of the East. In terms of the Western Conference, that's one of the things that I'm most looking forward to, is getting to see so many teams in action, because on the East, in the Eastern Conference, it's that 8th seed, which, as I just mentioned, is kind of irrelevant at this point, and you've got some seeding stuff. But in the West, trying to figure out who is going to get the 8th seed between Memphis, New Orleans, Sacramento, Portland, Phoenix, forgive me if I'm forgetting anybody else. And then, of course, getting to see guys like John Morant, and hopefully, fingers crossed, Zion Williamson as well. All those things are going to be really, really interesting to watch in the Orlando bubble. But at the end of the day, whether it's takes or the audio stuff or just general points about the NBA coming back, all I can say is it is such a great feeling to have live sports in general, but specifically the NBA back. I hope that everything continues to go well. I hope that it provides happiness and joy and a bit of a relief for a lot of people in a time that a lot of people desperately need it. And I hope that everybody is staying safe, not only in the bubble, but you guys at home as well. And I'm so excited to continue to watch the NBA, to have a chance to actually have new stuff to talk about and not have to keep going back, you know, into the past to find things to talk about, is going to be such an awesome feeling. And like I said, I really, really applaud the NBA for doing not necessarily everything correctly, and there's a lot of things they still need to figure out, but based off this first impression, I'm not really sure how it could have gone much better, with the exception of some very, very minor things. So huge shout out to the NBA, and finally, we get basketball back. And yeah, there you have it. That is going to be the end of today's video, and I thank you all very much for watching. Once again, my name is Tucker. If you missed any of my previous videos, then be sure to check out the boxes on screen. Thanks again, and I'll see you all next time.